In this lesson, we're going to go through all the steps to knit a basic pair of mittens like these. And I give you the option of knitting some plain like this or with a design on them. It's totally up to you. I'm in the pattern, I'm giving you a couple of options for different designs on your mittens. The techniques that we're using in these videos are pretty standard across the board for a lot of mitten patterns. But if you'd like to follow along with this mitten pattern here or this Argyle design here, this pattern's available for purchase and download over on VeryPink.com. So first up, we're going to get started with the cast on. And when you work mittens, you start here at the cuff like this, you work up, you add some stitches for the thumb, and you knit the rest of the hand, do some decreasing for the top and close up the top, and then we go back and knit the thumb. But the first step, of course, is getting stitches cast on and working in the round. So here we have double pointed needles with most of the stitches cast on, and I'm using a long tail cast on for this. And if you need a review on the long tail cast on, I have a video that goes through this cast on slowly. I just need to cast on a few more stitches to finish this up. Okay. Those black mittens I was wearing got fuzz all over my white background. Okay, once you have the stitches cast on, arrange them in an H shape like this with all the knots lined up on the inside. And your working yarn and your tail are over here on the right needle. Now what's going to happen is we are going to use this working yarn to knit this stitch, and when we do, we'll close up the circle and start knitting the cuff. So the point here about the table is that we want to leave this on the table for as long as possible to keep things from getting twisted. So I am going to turn this around like this. This is going to be my first stitch, so I want it facing me. I also want it closer to the tip. Still on the table, nothing's getting twisted. I put my needle in there, grab the working yarn, and wrap the needle and pull it through. Whoops, I split the yarn on the first stitch. Okay, and now that I've done that, nothing has a chance to get twisted anymore. So I knit the first two stitches, and now I'm going to start purling. And to do that, I take the working yarn and pull it forward between the two needles and do 2 purl stitches. Now I'm going to go back to knitting, so I put the yarn back between the 2 needles and knit 2. And then forward to purl 2 again. Working with double pointed needles is just like working with 2 needles. You only knit with 2 needles at a time. It looks very complicated and scary, but you're really only knitting with 2 at a time. These other needles are just hanging there, waiting for us to come to them. Okay, in this pattern, I have the stitches arranged so that you will always end with purl 2 at the end of a row, at the end of a needle. And so to go to the next needle, you see where the working yarn is. The next needle is always to the left of the working yarn. So I put the empty needle in my right hand, and I always start with knit 2 on each needle. And I'm going to work knit 2, purl 2, around and around and around. Now I don't have you placing a marker to note the beginning of your round, but you'll always know where it is because it's wherever the tail is hanging. And the tail's coming from between these 2 needles right there, so I know that's the beginning of my round. Once I work all the way around back to where the tail is, I've completed 1 round. So you want to go ahead and knit the cuff for as many inches as the pattern tells you to. Actually, the cast on numbers are different as well for the different sizes. So knit the length that you need for the size that you're knitting. And next up, we're going to learn how to add stitches for the thumb gusset. We're at a point now where you should have your cuff finished. You followed the pattern and knit for as many inches as it tells you to, and we're ready to start adding stitches for the thumb gusset. And I'll show you here. Here's your cuff. We're going to add stitches here so the mitten is shaped like a hand and actually goes out at the thumb. So let's get right to the work. Here is your cuff, and everything should line up and be super stretchy. The 2x2 rib is really nice and stretchy. You're going to follow your pattern. We're not working ribbing anymore. We're just going to do plain knitting now. Follow your pattern to knit up to the spot where you need to start the thumb gusset. And I'm going to just guesstimate here. I know about where it goes, but it doesn't need to be perfect while I'm demonstrating this for you. You've had a lot of practice with the double-pointed needles now, which is good. Okay, we'll say that this is where I need to start my thumb gusset. The first thing I do is I take a stitch marker, and I have an itty-bitty ring marker here. I slide it onto the right needle. Now I'm going to do a make one stitch, specifically a make one left stitch. And I'll demonstrate these for you more slowly here on a bigger piece of work. You pick up the bar between the two stitches from front to back. Actually, I always do it with the right needle. You can just start with the left needle. From front to back, and you knit that stitch through the back loop. Then you knit one. Now you want to work a make one right, which means you take the tip of the left needle, pull up the bar between the two stitches from back to front, and knit it through the front loop. Now you've just made 2 extra stitches out of nowhere, and that's going to give you the increases for the thumb gusset. Place another marker, and continue around with the rest of the round. Now let me show you the make one stitches a little better. This is a lot easier to see. So what I did first was a make one left. You see the bar between the 2 stitches here? I picked that up from front to back with the left needle and knit that stitch through the back loop. I'll show you again. Pick up that bar from front to back and knit that through the back loop. And a make one right, pick the bar up from back to front and knit it through the front loop. It's pretty hard to get your needle in there. From back to front and knit it through the front loop. So those are the make one increases. You're going to follow your pattern because you'll work an increase round like that every few rounds, and gradually the thumb gusset will get bigger and bigger, of course, as you have more stitches in there. One note about the make one. If you're finding that make ones are really easy to work and it's easy to get your needle in there to knit it, you're probably not doing it correctly. The whole point of knitting the make one left through the back loop is to twist the stitch, which keeps there from being a hole in the work. If you knit it through the front loop, which is very, very easy to do, it means you're going to end up with a hole in the work. So 2 things: if you find that your make one stitches are easy to work and leaving a hole in the work, you're not twisting the stitch, so go back and make sure you're doing it correctly. Next up, we're going to reserve the stitches for the thumb. Okay. If you are ready to divide for the thumb gusset, or to divide the thumb gusset stitches, you should have a lot of stitches on the needle right now. I have my markers here, and all of these stitches are new that I was adding with the make ones. So we are going to reserve the thumb stitches and continue knitting the rest of the hand, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Here we are at the beginning of the round, and again, I know this is the beginning of the round because there's my tail. I'm going to knit up to the first marker, This is exciting because Once you get those thumb stitches reserved, the knitting goes really quickly because you don't have nearly as many stitches. Okay, here I am at the first marker. I'm going to take that marker out. We don't need it anymore. And I'm going to take my tapestry needle and a piece of scrap yarn. And I always like to use scrap yarn that's thinner than the working yarn that I'm using. I'll thread that. And now I'm going to take all of these stitches between the marker and put them on this scrap yarn. So I take my tapestry needle and I slide it into those stitches as if to purl, just sliding them straight off of the needle onto the tapestry needle until I get to the next marker. Slide those onto the yarn, and those are safe until we come back to them. And of course, you can take out the next marker. So here we are. We have a few stitches over here and a few stitches over here, and all of these thumb gusset stitches in the middle. We want to cast on one stitch here to cover this gap before we continue on with the rest of this needle. To do that, I'm going to do a backwards loop cast on, which means just twisting the yarn around your thumb like this and sliding it onto the needle. I'll do that again. You just twist it around your thumb and slide it onto the needle. And I just did 2 of them. I only need 1. And now I'm going to continue knitting just as if those thumb gusset stitches weren't even there. Continue knitting the rest of this stick. Okay, so you see what we have here. We're still on 3 needles. These thumb gusset stitches are just going to wait there until we come back to them to finish the thumb. And you can just knit round and around, plain, to finish the hand. So you want to go ahead and follow the pattern to continue knitting the rest of the hand. And next up, I'm going to show you how to embroider a design using duplicate stitch. If you want to add a design to the front of your mitten, now is the time to do it before you close up the top. It seems like you would just want to finish the mitten and add it, but I'm telling you, it is nice to have one hand in the mitten like this and the other hand operating the needle from this side when you do the pattern. So let's take a look. I've given you a couple of options for things to add, like this Pac-Man pattern or Argyle. And really, you can look online and look at free cross-stitch motifs, and you can add those to the mittens, really anything you like. I'm going to use this big sample to demonstrate how to do the duplicate stitch because it's much easier to see on here. And because this is chunky weight yarn, I'm going to hold worsted yarn double weight so you can see what I'm doing. Double stranded. Now we've talked before about knit stitches looking like V's. Come in at the bottom of a V like this, and then skip that V and put your tapestry needle through both legs of the V above it. Pull that through and watch your tension. Remember, this is decorative. We want it to look really good. And then go back down into the same hole you came out of. There you go, there's a V. I'm going to do it again. Come in at the bottom of a V like this. It's getting twisted on the back. I'm straightening it out. Skip that V, go through both legs of the V above it. Pull that through and then go back down into the same hole you came out of. That is duplicate stitch. You keep doing that over and over and really look at how the stitches look as you make them. I can see right here that this one I want to loosen up a little bit to make it look really good. So I did that before I move on to the next one. And let's take a look at the mitten. You can place your pattern anywhere you like on here, but you want to count down and then count the number of stitches in the design you're using to see where it's going to place on the mitten. You want to pay attention to where that is, and then of course make the other mitten to match. So you want to follow your pattern to do the decreases for the top of the mitten and the Kitchener stitch. And how to do that is all spelled out in the pattern. Next up, we're going to learn how to finish up the thumb. So your mitten should be finished. And my sample isn't closed on top, but yours should be closed on top. And all we have left is this empty spot where the thumb should be. And that's what we're going to cover right now. So we had the scrap yarn through all of these stitches. I've already slid a couple of needles into the stitches that were there. And now we'll do the last one together. Here's my scrap yarn. I take a needle and I just slide my needle in to pick up those stitches. Now, once my needle is in there and those stitches are safe, I can pull the scrap yarn out. You see I have all these on the needle. Now we need to get the yarn attached again, and to do that, I'm going to make this my first stitch. I'll take the empty needle and put it into that first stitch. Then I go back to my yarn and I just fold the yarn over like this. It's so simple, just making a loop like that. And I take that loop, well, I leave myself a few inches of tail there so I can weave in the end later. I wrap that around the needle and pull it through, and the yarn is officially attached. On the next stitch, you'll want to separate the tail from the working yarn and just knit around. This is just like the knitting you were doing with the double pointed needles when you were knitting the cuff and the hand, except for we have hardly any stitches going here. We're knitting a tiny tube. Because there are hardly any stitches, the thumb knitting goes really quickly. And I want to get all the way around this so I can show you one more thing. Actually, that stitch got twisted. So the eagle eye watchers will see that I just knit that through the back loop to untwist it and go on with the rest of them normally. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. We're back here at the beginning of the round. I know I am because my working yarn is here, and that's the first stitch that I knit. I'm going to tie a knot with the working yarn and the tail end. I'm going to tie a pretty tight knot because that will close things up better and keep there from being a huge gap there. You're going to keep going around and around to knit the length of the thumb as long as your pattern tells you, and then you'll have a couple of decrease rounds. The last thing you'll do is you will break the yarn, you'll cut the yarn, and using your tapestry needle again, you'll thread that end onto the tapestry needle and then thread the tapestry needle through the last few stitches that are left after the decrease rounds and tighten it up. And that will close up the thumb like this. So follow the directions to finish the thumb, as long as it needs to be with the decrease rounds and closing at the top, and then you'll be ready to knit the second mitten.